Excellent. Well, just in the efforts of time, we're going to get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lily. I'm the Director of Customer Experience with Startup Space, and am pleased to be with Mitch this week, launching BizHub, which is a new virtual community in your location. We have been having events every morning at 9 o'clock, free discussions and various different topics to be able to offer content and resources to the community. And I'm going to be sharing after our main presentation today just a little bit about BizHub. All of you should have received a profile for BizHub when you registered for this event, and you would have received a temporary password. I want to encourage you to log in. I'll show you more of that journey when we conclude right at the end of this presentation. I do see some familiar faces, some individuals who have already been in BizHub. Thank you so much for going in and filling out your profile. It's great to have you here joining us today. Throughout the day, throughout the course of this presentation, if you wouldn't mind keeping your microphone on mute, you can certainly turn your camera on. Please note we are recording, but it is only presentation view, so you wouldn't be in the recording. If you do have any questions throughout the course of the conversation, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be sure to address them during the Q&A portion. But that's all I have from me right at this point in time. Like I said, I will be showing a little bit of BizHub. It'll just be about 5 minutes at the end of the presentation. So please stick around so you can see how you can continue the conversation after the presentation and how you can access more resources that might be able to support your business. But for now, I'd like to turn it over to our host, Mitch. Mitch.
Thank you, Lily, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us again this Thursday morning. I am, as Lily said, with the Small Business Development and International Trade Center at the College of Lake County. Basically, we're an organization that helps anybody who wants to start or grow a small business. And one of the things I always like to say to kind of capture what it is we do is that we inspire, we educate, and we connect. And the inspiration part of that is that we know that if you educate yourself and you make smart decisions as a business owner, you can succeed. And we always get excited about the idea of hanging out with people and talking with people who are going down that path, because everybody at the Small Business Development Center has been on that path at one point or another. And we just love working with entrepreneurs. So we hope to inspire. And secondly, we educate. Today, you're going to see a session and hear about Business Model Canvas from Mike McMahon, who's one of our advisors and trainers. And the whole idea of business planning is it's a critical thing, because you really do need to think through some really basic things like, what are you selling? Why does that matter to the target market you hope to sell to? Who is that target market? How are you going to compel them to buy from you? And a whole host of other things. And I won't steal Mike's thunder any more than that right now, but it's a very important topic. And so we hope that you get something good out of that. So we do a lot of education. This is just one of many programs that we offer, because we know that as a business owner operator, that it's good for you to understand all the things required to run a successful business. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do them all yourself. You should surround yourself with success resources. And that's really the third leg of the stool that I talked about, is the connection. So inspire, educate, and connect. And we are trying to do as much as we can to make sure that our small businesses here in Lake County have access to all the different kinds of success resources that are out there. And BizHub, which Lily already talked about, and we will speak more about before the end of our session today, we think is going to be a really important platform for enabling those kinds of connections. So thank you very much again for your time this morning. I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and he's going to tell us about Business Model Canvas. Go ahead, Mike.
Michael, you're the host.
All right. Yep. Thank you. Okay. I am, thanks, Mitch. Thanks, Lily. I am going to share my screen. So let me do that. And I believe you will see my header document now. So it should say the new business model. Thank you for joining us, and thanks for the nice intro, Mitch. I appreciate that. As Mitch mentioned, I work with the SBDC to help businesses not only on the advisory level, but at the training level. And one of the training courses that the SBDC is sponsoring is this. You're going to see a bit of it here, but this is a whole course that just commenced on Tuesday. So I'm going to give you a bit of a Cliff Notes version of what we're talking about with the business model plan and pivot. So a little bit about me. Believe it or not, I started marketing when I was 5 years old. So I spent 30 years in marketing. That's a bad joke to start off the festivities today. I did have 30 years of experience in marketing and marketing related roles at Medline. I worked there from when the company was fairly small and to the point where it's, I think when I left 3 years ago, it was exceeding $11 billion. So I've seen quite a different organization from start to finish in my career. And through the whole way, by the way, one of the things that Medline did, which has been ingrained upon me, is the need to be very, very conscious of controlling your spend and being very respectful of how important it is to cost contain, conserve resources. So despite the fact that this was a big company, they spent money and conserved resources like a very, very small company. So it was a good lesson to learn through many years was how do you optimize your resources? And I think myself and my colleagues at the company got pretty good at that. And that's one of the main features of the business model canvas that we're going to get to in a few minutes. It's a way to do something that's practical, yet conserving your resources. One of the other things that's also pervasive at Medline and lines up completely with the business model canvas is the fact that to be really successful in business means you've got to always challenge convention. At Medline, we had a saying that when you're ripe, you rot. So despite how good anything was ever going, you had to challenge it like, well, wait, is it going to stay good? How do I make it better? That's what business planning and the business model canvas is all about. You never want to rest on your laurels. You want to make sure that you're challenging convention, always looking for opportunities to improve. And that's kind of the theme of the business model canvas. It's not a one and done thing. It's an ongoing, it's like success is not a destination, it's a journey that lines up completely with the business model canvas. So here's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. I, as a marketer at heart, I've done a number of different roles. I was in e-commerce, I was in operations, I was in pricing, principally in marketing. Everything I did had some marketing slant to it. Marketing is all centered around asking questions. In my opinion, questions drive success. So always be asking questions. We're going to also talk about why planning is important. Planning not only important to what I described earlier, conserving resources, but it's an investment in success. Kind of got to do planning, and planning is one of those questions. Why is planning important? We're going to talk to you about that. We're also going to talk about the title of the session is Plan and Pivot. Just because you have a plan doesn't mean your plan's not going to change. In fact, in order to be useful, plans have to continuously change. So question is, if you are in need of a pivot, how do you know what to pivot to, or how do you know when to pivot? So we're going to talk about that for a bit. And then, as Mitch mentioned, the business model canvas, and I alluded to it a couple moments ago. I think it's an excellent tool. It's practical, and it is kind of a modern way to do business planning. So that kind of gives you the how. So if you start with a good why, and you learn your what and when, and then you have the tool to do it, how to do it, it's a pretty good formula there. And at the end, we're going to have time for some questions and answers. I hope, if I don't get too verbose. So first question, going along with the why is planning and pivoting important now? Okay, pretty hard to have a discussion nowadays about mentioning COVID. So I might ask a question to those out there, and if you could respond via the chat, that'd be great. But how many people's businesses have completely remained unaffected by COVID? Anybody out there? I'd like to hear from someone whose business was completely unaffected. because I don't think there's too many of them out there. COVID changed virtually every business on the planet. Very few businesses were unaffected. Some in a positive way, many in a negative way, but few unaffected. So planning and pivoting is more important now. It's always been important, but even now more so in the post-COVID environment. Even pre-COVID, I mentioned earlier the need to always challenge convention. That's another way of saying being agile. And even pre-COVID, being agile has always been important. And that's one of the secrets of success in my Medline career, was that company, Medline, is amazingly agile. They're always looking for opportunities. And if something changes, whether it be a government regulation or a new opportunity in the marketplace, Medline was always very, very quick to seize that opportunity. And because of that, they would capitalize on opportunities quicker than the competition and hence grow fast. That was the secret sauce. As a result of COVID, customers' expectations have changed. I shouldn't just say change. I should say have become more demanding. Customers, because of the advent of the internet, customers have been on a trajectory to become more demanding. And when they're sitting at home in front of a computer because of COVID and not being able to, having their leisure time compromised, their demands have become even more substantial. So that was another trend that was enhanced by COVID. And business cycles, okay, we've all seen the business cycle graphs where you see from new product to mature product to declining product. Those business cycles for products and services are shortening. And there's a number of reasons why they're shortening. The ability to get, everyone has access to resources now. There was a time when if you wanted to build a website, you'd have to find a hosting service, you'd have to hire a developer, you'd have to hire a strategist to do all this. Now you can literally go to a site like Wix and in less than an afternoon, possibly an hour, you could spin up a website for $20 a month or something like that, or even there's free versions as well. So that's just one of the things that's out there that demonstrates that the barriers to entry are very, very low now. You can hire help through the Upwork and Fiverr and things like that. So you can start a business quickly. So the competition is getting fierce as a result of that. So all of this is a way of saying, why should you be planning? Because of all the things I just mentioned. And I'm a firm believer that planning leads to efficiency. It's easy to think, oh, I don't have time to plan. I'm very busy. I got to take care of my customers. I got to take care of my business. I'll plan later, and you back burner it. And unfortunately, it's like one of those things you just can't back burner it. You'll get to it later, and then you're postponing success is what happens, in my opinion. So by planning leads to the efficiency, and you're basically going to drive success. And as I mentioned earlier, you're going to conserve resources. Okay, you've all probably seen some form of this kind of chart where you see the evolution of mankind back from, as the conventional wisdom is, the Darwinian theory of we all evolved from primates, and now to upright walking Homo sapiens. Okay, well, I think business planning has had an evolution of sorts as well. So there was a time back in the day where business plans were something that you did because, and by the way, life was simpler back then. You would make a product, you'd advertise it on TV or in the yellow pages, or have a service and advertise it. There wasn't the competition there is now. Everything was easier, and I liken it to like the old days of the big oak desks, and we're going to review our business plan every 5 years, whether the bank is asking for us to do it or not. So business plans were kind of like, yeah, unnecessary evil. You got to do it, but we're good. We're everything's fine. We're good. And you didn't really think too much about planning more than every couple of years. So then we had what I'll call it the internet revolution, or the data revolution, and everybody had just amazing amounts of data thrown at them. This picture here with a guy that's got about almost a foot of reports sitting on his desk. Yeah, all the information you probably need is in that stack somewhere, but which pieces of information are important? How do I put that data to practical use. And you went from a situation where you never really looked at your business planning, you did it, every couple of years, to every day. The picture here, I had one of my supervisors at Medline. I walked into his office one day and there was a stack very similar to that, maybe even larger. And he looked at me and he started laughing and he goes, "What do they expect me to do with this?" And this was a set of daily reports that this gentleman would get. And that was just indicative of, well, too much data is not practical. If you try to make something with too much of it, it just becomes cumbersome, and too much data, too much planning. So it's kind of like the pendulum swung too far and people did a lot of planning, and then you got the 67-page planning document with a bunch of charts and graphs and nobody could understand it. So that was the next step in the evolution, which was, I don't know if that was a step in the right direction, but now I think we've come to a new horizon. We've got the business model canvas and everybody can rejoice and run on the beach and enjoy the sunshine. And I'm overselling the business model canvas a little bit, but I wanted to drive home the point that it is the opposite of that middle picture. It's the answer to the dilemma of the 67-page business plan. It's practical, it's workable, it just is, it's what you need to do, and it's not any superfluous stuff that isn't going to help you. All right, I've said a lot in a short period of time. Any questions before I keep moving on? Any questions about business planning? Anybody got any comments or successes or failures or comments on business planning?
Michael, what do you see one of the biggest sort of errors with business plans, like the biggest hurdle that people have to go over?
That's a good question. I think the first one is, I would say that people just ignore doing it. They think they don't have, I talked about this a moment ago, I think that people don't think they need to do it, or they don't have time for it, or maybe they even accept the fact that they should be doing it, but they don't know how to get started. So that's one of the beauties of the business model canvas is it's a roadmap. It's not intimidating. And hopefully in the exposure I'm going to give you folks today to the business model canvas, I'm hoping that you do feel more like you're running along the beach and not inundated by data, because it's workable. So I think one of the big mistakes is either not planning or thinking that it's a tremendously overwhelming thing and getting wrapped up in the minutia. And that's what's nice about the business model canvas. It's got 9 elements. They're all easy to understand and easy to put into use. But thank you for that. But I think anything's better than not doing it. So if anybody's out there that doesn't have a business plan, take heed to what we're talking about today. And there are resources on that we're going to show you later on as Lily goes into the BizHub. There's actually a template on BizHub for the business model canvas. I'm going to show you how to use it. This will give you the actual blank screen that you can start filling in. So, but thank you for that. That is important. It's basically, you just got to break the inertia and get going on it. And this is a good practical approach to break that inertia. Okay, so what has forced this change, this evolution? Well, I mentioned earlier, barriers to entry are lower. You can have Fiverr, Upwork, all these things. You can hire out just about any service you need. So anybody can get into a business virtually overnight. Talked about that. So all this means the playing field is now very, very, very level. Anybody can be in the business and anybody can be your competition. And all this means is the rate of change is accelerating. So you've got to be on your toes. If you're not on your toes, you will find that the competition, that's another good thing. Always be thinking, what's my competition doing today? What do you think they're working on today? I wonder if am I doing better than they are today in my planning for the future? Am I building for the future, or am I just kind of sitting back and letting life happen to me? So I talked a lot about the importance of planning. Now we're going to talk about kind of a subset of planning, I like to call it, pivoting. It's kind of like a modification or a change to your business planning. So as I mentioned earlier, it's probably good to always be prepared to pivot, always be in that mode things might feel great, but I'm wondering, what do I got to do to make things better? How do I prepare for the eventual setback? Am I going to be ready if there is a setback? Am I going to be ready to overcome that setback? So I always say, always be prepared to pivot, continually challenge your model, and stay on top of either leading or bleeding indicators. And this is, I think this is something that people don't necessarily subscribe to automatically. Leading indicators, everybody looks at their sales, everybody looks at their profitability, that's fine. Maybe even you're looking at the rate of growth of your new customers. That would be good to also. However, there's a term called bleeding indicators, and bleeding indicators is what is out there that's a sign that things are not so great, and there might be some setbacks looming, and maybe you haven't really fully realized the setbacks yet, but they're out there. And if you are looking at the right things, you might see that a setback might be coming. In my Medline career, we had a number of data points that we used, metrics, to analyze. First, we take the seasonality out of the data, but then we look for like customer purchasing trends. And there were certain things that you would see when a customer was, because they didn't, many product lines, they didn't just flip the switch overnight and they go, customer, not a customer. They would tend to, they'd trial a competitor's product for a while. So you'd see a slight dip. And anyway, we had a number of metrics that applied to our businesses that tried to give us a heads up if something was going wrong. We also had put a strong emphasis on the growth of new products, because you know that you're always going to be losing some customers. You're always going to be losing some portions of your business. But if you can plant the seeds for growth, and the growth of your new products and your new customers is exceeding the loss of the diminished sales from your lost business, then obviously you're going to grow if you're exceeding the loss. So what are those leading indicators? I think it's a big thing, and I think it's often overlooked. So I challenge people, and I said this in the course on Tuesday when we talked about this. It's actually the workshop assignment. I asked each of the participants to think about their business. Every business is unique. What are the bleeding indicators for your business? What are the things that would give you a heads up that something might be about to go south? So think about that. It's one of the takeaways I'd like you to think about is what are bleeding indicators. And then if you do have a setback, then you have to think, well, is this temporary? It's just every business has blips. Some are seasonality, some are just, an anomaly. It's not normal, but likely if it is an anomaly, it'll probably bounce back. But in some cases, this is just the shape of things to come. And it might not be temporary. This might be a shift. And if it's a big shift, maybe it's a whole paradigm shift. So you got to try to assess based on these metrics that you're looking at, is it temporary or is it a long-term trend? And this is a big one. And hearkening back to Lily's question a while ago on what are some of the challenges with the business planning, I think another thing is people are so wrapped up in trying to get it perfect that they're don't let perfect get in the way of good. So they are so apprehensive about building a plan because they think it's so daunting that they don't ever get around to it because they are worried too much. And I think that's one of the things the business model planning tool, the business model canvas, is going to help alleviate. And this goes without saying, but stay informed and be ready to move. So exactly how do you stay informed? What resources do you have to keep you informed, available at your fingertips? In my Medline career and post-Medline career, I encourage clients, and I did myself, I spent a lot of time talking to suppliers. They often have insights that you're not attuned to, insights in the marketplace and market dynamics. Maybe they know something about a customer trend or something that you don't know. So I recommend strong conversations and key connections with your suppliers. Complementary businesses, there might be surprised at how open people are to sharing information with you if they don't view you as a competitor. So if you're in, a similar related business, if you're in construction and somebody else is in real estate or something like that, they might be able to offer you insights that is no threat to them because they're not going to lose business to you, and they might have meaningful insights for you that might help you in your planning. So try to use your network for information. Trade publications, obviously, there's usually a lot of good information on there. Obviously, most of these now are newsletters, so it's very, very, you don't have to wait for the monthly magazine. It's very current because it's just an online newsletter in most cases. So I would do my best to try to read those as much as you can. BizHub, that's kind of the nature of what we're talking about today. So there's a lot of resources on BizHub, and that's got to use those resources to stay informed and inform your planning. And I just have a strong recommendation to take as many of these courses like this, webinars, just expose yourself to different venues, different types of people. It might not even be directly related to your business, but it's amazing how you'll get ideas in something that might be completely unrelated. You might just go, wow, I could do that in my business. And if you weren't on that webinar where that was brought up, you wouldn't have any knowledge of that, and you'd potentially miss an opportunity. And as a marketer, my favorite, I didn't list it last on purpose because of the recency effect. I did do it on purpose. Customers are a wealth of information. Whenever you can, we had kind of a saying in my Medline career, there's no better time spent than face-to-face, or in the Zoom world, I guess, face-to-face with customers. Not only just talking to them, but if you can, the greatest thing to do would be to observe how they use your product or service, if that is practical. I was VP of marketing for one of the product divisions at Medline, and it was surgical products. And I literally went into OR suites and had the masks and the bouffant cap and the shoe covers and the scrubs and all that off in the corner, staying out of the way so I couldn't get in trouble. But I observed surgeries and how my products are being used in the real world, not just how somebody thinks they're being used. So I can't say enough about what you can gain by not only talking to customers, but observing customer activities, and especially when they're using your product or service. All right, a lot about information. Now we're going to talk about pivots. So there's certain types of pivots out there. By the way, there's more than I'm going to list here. This is just a handful of them to give you some ideas of types of pivots that take place. A new product line is a way of pivoting. Think of Apple. Back in the day, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, they built a PC, one of the first PCs out there, desktop personal computer, and that was their product. And they did very well with it, and that allowed them to invest in other products. But now look at it, they're everything. Phones, I'm wearing an Apple Watch, I have an iPhone, I've got Apple TV, all over the place. And my house is full of Apple stuff, laptops. I'm presenting from an Apple desktop right now. So broad product line because of the continuous introduction of new products. A new customer segment, going back to my Medline days. When I had started at Medline many years ago, they sold to hospitals, and they had just started selling to nursing homes. And when I left, they called it the continuum of care. They sold to hospitals, nursing homes, surgery centers, physicians' offices, hospice care, laundries, home health dealers, home health agencies, you name, especially and online, of course, so consumers. So everybody that uses some form of medical products was a potential target segment for Medline Industries. So maybe there's an opportunity for you to pivot into a new customer segment as well. A different form of distribution. Think of Netflix. I don't know, some of you probably know the history of Netflix, but they used to ship DVDs through the mail. Reed Hastings, the founder, CEO, he founded the company because he got in trouble with his spouse because he had late fees on the DVDs, and he thought there's got to be a better way. So then he mailed himself some DVDs and found they could go through the mail, and he started a company around that. And then I saw him speak at a conference a few years after that, and this is way before broadband and way before Wi-Fi. And he said, the future is you're not going to need a DVD. You're going to be doing this all online. And I'm thinking to myself, how the heck, there's so much data. How could you do that? Well, he was a visionary and he was right. So he knew there was a different way to distribute his product, and very valuable company, obviously. Here's one of my favorites. This is a company I discovered in doing the research for this, a company in Houston, Texas. It's called AK Wetworks. And if anybody has been to Houston or is familiar with the Houston area, I've been there a number of times. Houston's a big oil refinery. It's big oil down there in Texas. And the refineries they contract out services, and AK Wetworks had a significant business that was centered around equipment that they used to clean these oil refineries in the Houston area. Well, sure you remember a little over a year ago, or around a year ago, when COVID hit big time, people stopped driving. And the price of crude oil, the futures actually went negative. So the companies were actually paying you to take the oil because they had too much of it. They didn't know what to do with it. The price of oil went negative for a month or two there. And so the refineries weren't a viable option. The refineries were effectively shut down for a while. So how does AK Wetworks respond? How do they pivot in this? For them, I'm sure it was a time of crisis. I'm sure their business went close to zero. So what they did, which I thought was brilliant, was they repurposed their equipment that they used to clean the oil refinery equipment, and they used that to clean other types of equipment and clean it to be COVID safe. And they used this in factories, they used it in distribution centers, and healthcare settings. So this equipment that they used to use to clean oil refineries was now being used to do COVID cleaning and sterilization. So I thought it was a brilliant reuse of their equipment. It was born out of necessity. Now I believe it's a major product area for them, service area, I should say. So there's all kinds of different types of pivots, some born out of just innovation, some born in the AK Wetworks example, that's born out of necessity. But they did a great job of responding to it. So there's some companies that are good at pivoting, some not so good. The classic example of somebody who didn't do too well with the pivot was Blockbuster. Somebody who did do well when you couldn't afford a whole Blockbuster store for videos, but there was still a segment out there of people who wanted to rent DVDs. So you'll see a red box outside of a grocery store or Walgreens, et cetera. So out of the same opportunity, out of the same market shift, Blockbuster died as a result of it. Redbox flourished effectively. Sears, of course, classic example, didn't respond to the internet buying. Target, another brick and mortar store, found a way to be very successful online. Same thing, Circuit City couldn't make it in the old brick and mortar way, but Best Buy, pretty similar business model, found a way to be successful selling online. Okay, we're going to be diving into the business model canvas. Just want to take a very brief pause. Anybody have any comments or questions before I get into the nuts and bolts of the business model canvas?
Hey, Mike,
right.
It's Mitch.
Hey, Mitch.
Hey, Mike. So one of the things that I always, I personally dealt with when I was in business for myself, and I now see that now that we work with new entrepreneurs all the time, is the difficulty that people experience going from having a plan to actually taking action. And even if you have something as simple and straightforward as business model canvas, sometimes people still get stuck in that, never ending cycle of refinement before they actually take action and, start to reach out to their target market and try to acquire customers. Do you have any thoughts on how to not have that be a roadblock?
Well, it's an excellent point. Plans without execution is just a wish. So you have to take action. So your point is very well taken. Yeah, I think you can't just work in a vacuum and just build your plans and not think you got to execute on them. So I think the best approach that I could recommend would be to carve out time for planning in your week. I know it's hard for those of you running a business, you think you don't have time for the planning, but carve out a couple of hours a week for planning, just as much as you can. And then also, correspondingly, carve out a similar amount of time for the execution part of it. So let's take an example. And thanks for the idea, Mitch. I think this is going to be a good example here. Let's say you want to use one of those pivots that we talked about. Let's say you think you want to enter a new market. Okay, so that's one of your, you put that on, we're going to get to the business model canvas in a moment, but let's say you've decided you want to pursue a new market. Okay, well then that's great. It's on a piece of paper, you're on a spreadsheet, you've said, I want to enter XYZ marketplace. Okay, so then once you do that, you have to think, okay, well, what steps do I have to do to enter the XYZ market? And don't stop at just saying I need to enter the XYZ market. Think, what steps do I have to take to enter that market? So that would be on your planning side of the fence. And then during your execution time, you now have to take those steps. I'm going to do research online to learn more about XYZ market. I'm going to just cold call some people. I'm going to reach out to my network and ask anybody if they have any information that would help me as I enter the XYZ market. I'm going to talk to those suppliers. I'm going to talk to my current customers. They might be in the XYZ market. So I think my verbose way of answering your question, Mitch, is to carve out time not only for the planning, but for the execution, because planning without execution, like I said, is just kind of a wish.
Thanks, Mike. That makes a lot of sense. Time management.
Yeah, I know people don't like to do that. They kind of like to, some people like to just kind of let their day go, but you should, if you can, I don't want to sound like Tony Robbins here, but plan for your success, plan your time, and plan the execution. And that's probably what, I mean, planning, there's all those studies that show you that people that have goals and plans do far better than those that don't. And those goals and plans are not just the plan, it's the execution. So thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate that. Okay, the business model canvas. The business model canvas was developed by a gentleman named Alex Osterwalder, and he had this book that I have on my shelf. I won't grab it at this moment, but he wrote this book back in 2005, he and a colleague. And he's a consultant. He's in Europe, I believe. I think he's in the Netherlands, if I'm not mistaken, but somewhere in Europe. And he, as a very successful consultant, and he wanted to develop, exactly what we're talking about here, something that was practical, that was not this, 97-page document. So it's practical and usable. It's not intimidating, and it enables that agility that I spoke before about being so highly important. And I like to say it's for real business owners, not just people that are, writing a book or something, or being not in a real business. So here's the key. The business model canvas isn't going to take you months or maybe not even weeks to complete. You can do this in a relatively short period of time. However, just because it's not long and complicated doesn't mean you can't do that research. You can't do this in a vacuum. You have to be reaching out to not only sources of information, but to the customer, suppliers, the list that I gave you earlier. You got to have interaction. Success, I just was listening to a podcast yesterday. Success requires interaction with others. You just can't do it in a vacuum. And one of my favorite things, it's question-based. I think everything should be question-based. And the business model canvas, no exception, it's focused on 9 key business areas. So there's a template for this out on BizHub. I don't want to intimidate you, and I know you can't read all this, but all I need you to see from this at this moment is there's 9 cells. There's some tall cells that are larger. There's some wide cells, and then there's some smaller cells. All I want you to see right now is the right side versus the left side. There's 9 elements to this, but you do all your work in this business model canvas. And the blue on your screen is what I call the external stuff. That's the what you're going to deliver to your customers, whether it be a product or service. That's the value you're going to deliver to the marketplace that's going to allow you to earn a living and generate revenue. So that's the value you're bringing to the world, the blue. All of the cells in blue relate to that. And then the other side, the green, I call that the internal. So the blue is what you got to deliver. The green is, what do you got to do to deliver that? What do you got to do internally? How are you going to deliver that value? Things like operations, operations costs, research and development, things like that. Things that are, this is the spend. So the blue is your revenue, the green is kind of your spend. That's the simple way of looking at the business model canvas. There's 9 cells. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the first 2 because time's tight today. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the first 2. And I encourage you, I believe we're recording this, that you'll be able to watch this whole thing in the future if you miss anything. And the SBDC does sponsor those courses that I mentioned earlier. So I believe they'll be repeating them over the summer. So I encourage you to join in the next session if you could. It'll be over the summer. And we'll do all 9 in depth as we're doing. But for today, I just want to give you a deeper dive into 2 of them. And as a marketer, both relate to marketing, surprisingly. Customer segments, okay? Customer segments are, who are my targets? One of the biggest mistakes people make with marketing is they think every customer segment is a target. And my first response to them is, you can't be everything to everybody. Just because they're a segment doesn't mean they're your segment. Let somebody else handle that because that's not in your wheelhouse. So identify who are your targets in your customer segments. And then it's not a coincidence that value proposition is the center of this whole model, this whole framework. The value proposition is, that's your reason for being. That's what's going to take those targets that have a need or a challenge that you can help them with. And why should they choose you? Why your product? Why your service over the competition? So value proposition, I've talked to a number of clients about this. It's funny. If you ask some people about their value, well, like, what is your value proposition? You'll get the head scratch, like, well, oh, I've got a great product and our costs are good. And well, that's not a value proposition. The value proposition has to be leading the customers. Customers want to be led. That you have to show empathy, that you know their challenges, you know their needs, and you're a good choice to help satisfy those needs and challenges. So that's a brief look at the first 2 segments of the business model canvas. I'm going to go through the other ones just so you know. Channels, there's different channels, like what methods of distribution do you need for your product or service. Customer relationships, do you have a sales team? Do you use manufacturers reps? Do you sell online? How do you do that? And then revenue streams. I'll relate this briefly to Medline. I was a product manager for wheelchairs, and wheelchairs would have a parts element to it. So you not only got revenue from selling the wheelchairs, but you got revenue from the parts as well. You might have if you sell equipment, you might have a revenue stream for a warranty, et cetera. Okay, now we're flipping over to the green side of things, the key resources. What resources do you need to provide that value on the blue side? What activities do you have to do to deliver that value? Do you have to invest in training programs? Do you have to provide sustainability requirements to customers, as an example? You know, like, what is the carbon footprint for your product or service? People are now asking for that. You have to be able to deliver that. So you have to be able to have the data. You got to spend money to get the data. What partnerships do you have to have? We mentioned suppliers earlier. What distributors do you need? What marketing agencies do you need to help deliver your product or service? And then finally, your cost structure is, are you a manufacturer? Are you a distributor, et cetera? What types of things are involved in your cost customer? I came from, one of my product lines was textiles, and it was really highly tied to the cost of cotton for towels and sheets and drapes and things like that. So as cotton went, so went the cost structure of the textiles. So that was a kind of a rapid fire review of the business model canvas. There's lots to digest in a short period of time. Did anybody got any questions on any of the things that I've talked about? And I apologize for going through it quickly, but time necessitated that. All right. Well, if that is not no other questions, then I'm going to turn this back over to Lily.
Mike.
Yes.
Yes, this is Kevin. Good to see you today.
Hey, Kevin.
I'm sorry, I'm catching up at the last moment. I have questions about the new business model of e-commerce related to business planning. As you know, the e-commerce is another giant animals in the coming business trend. So when our small businesses implement their business planning, I want to hear from you, which factors do they have to consider, especially for the e-commerce side, for their business planning?
That's a good question. I'm going to take you back a couple of slides because I was responsible for Medline.com, so I'm pretty adept at the e-commerce side of things. And these two elements that we talked about here, just because I went to the wrong slide, sorry. Just because a customer is, I don't know why I'm having trouble here going backwards. These two elements here, the who are my targets, and most importantly, the value proposition. I ran into this with some of my colleagues at my former employer, that just because you have a website doesn't mean people are obligated to go and spend money on it. You still have to, it's still highly reliant on business basics. Do I have, am I hitting the right people? Is my website speaking to them? Is my message resonating with them? Because if I'm not targeting well, I could have the most luxurious, beautiful website on the planet, and it's not going to resonate with my customers. And then even if I do a great job of resonating with them, and I've connected to the right people who have the right need, now am I going to resonate with my solution to their need? So I think e-commerce, there's a lot of technical aspects to that. I focused my e-commerce team on delivering those very important, the value proposition and resonating with the customers, because that's universal, regardless of the mode of selling to customers, whether it be in person, online, over the phone, et cetera, through distributors. You can't get around the fact that you need to be targeting the right people and delivering the value to resonate with them. And I hate to give you like a repeat answer here, but I was 100% convinced that the success in e-commerce was related to showing that you can deliver value when they're visiting your website, and trusting in your organization and doing a good job of informing those customers that you are a good choice. I don't know if I did a good job of answering your question, but that's my firm belief in the success of e-commerce.
Thank you, Mike. Value proposition. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else?
Hey, Mike. Hey, Mike, quick question here from Sam. Great presentation. I think, the external to me is, I'm more good at that. And then the internal ops, I'm not so good at. Do you see a lot of business owners that are sort of really good at one side and really need help or somebody else to, shore up the other side?
Well, that's a good question, Sam. Yeah, I think what happens is, as a marketer, I believe that people tend to focus on what their strengths are. So if somebody is, I'll take an example. Somebody works at a marketing agency and they're really good at the marketing side of things. They want to start their own business. They tend to focus on the things they're familiar with, and they don't do a good job of those initiatives and the cost structure and the things on the green side of the fence. Conversely, I've known of people that have a really good product or service, and it's really good, and they're focused on that, and they don't spend the time, invest in high, because they're not a marketer, okay? They make widgets, or they provide widget service, and they're great at what they do, but then they don't get out of their shell and realize, how do I get the world to know how great my product is? How do I package it? How do I resonate with my customers? They just think, well, all I got to do is have a great product and I'm good. And that's fine, but you can't, again, overusing the word, you can't live in a vacuum. So I think people that are like, and you said that you're more on the op side, on what I would call the green side of the fence here, include people on the other side of the fence that are going to help you with your targeting and help you with messaging so that you are going to be able to deliver, to demonstrate to your customers that you do deliver the value that you believe that you do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's just it's something I mentioned I read in that or I heard in that podcast yesterday. You have to expand your horizon and hire experts in the areas that you're not expert at yourself. And people are often reluctant to do that. And there's a reason why I have an accountant. I'm a marketer. I'm not an accountant, etc. Anyone else? Thanks for the question. Appreciate that. Big fan of questions. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Lily here. So I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you for your questions and your input. I appreciate it, folks.
Absolutely. So we're just gonna, if you could just give me a host ability here.
I did stop share.
Yeah. So just 1 second here, and then we're going to, I'm going to share my screen. One second here. I need you to actually just go into participants and switch me over to host.
All right.
Just 1 second, everyone. Thanks so much for your patience.
There we go. I think.
There we go. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that presentation, Michael, and for mentioning that on BizHub, we actually have a template that all of you can use and take all this valuable information you got from Michael. And I'm going to show you exactly where that is. So as I mentioned at the very beginning of this call, and I'm going to share my screen, you all were created a free profile on BizHub. And just so you know, BizHub is absolutely free. We have a whole bunch of resources in there, and I want to show you how to actually access BizHub with the temporary password that was sent to you. Or if you don't have your temporary password, you can always request a new one. So if you go to actually the College of Lake County, Illinois Small Business International Trade page, you can see right here a really easy access to BizHub. And so I'll put that in the chat as well. But BizHub, if you click right here, this is the location of BizHub. And BizHub is a virtual location where you can access resources forward facing, but it's also a virtual community that you can log into and have more peer-to-peer support. You can connect with other members, and you can access other tools such as the Business Model Canvas, where I'll show you. So on BizHub right here, you'll notice, and this is all powered by Startup Space, so that's why I'm here. I actually work with Mitch, and we are kind of the scaffolding under BizHub. And so it will tell you a little bit about BizHub, about Startup Space, and then here's all those resources, the resource compass, there's a calendar of events, a knowledge center, and then some stories. And I'm going to show you how to access those within the community as well to get a really deeper experience. But no, you don't have to log in to see a list of resources, but I want to show you how you can. So if you just go in to connect with us, it's take you to our Join Us page where you can put in your email address and your password right here. If you haven't registered, you can register just by clicking right here. You just need an email address and a password, that's all. And again, no fees. And I also want you to know that we are an app. And so you can download the Startup Space app, and then you can access the BizHub community with all your local resources. If you forgot your password, you can click right here. So once you do that and you log in, you're going to go right into the actual BizHub community, which is that virtual community. Again, it's also on an app as well as this desktop. And so you're looking at my profile right now. But when you get in there, you'll actually be looking at your profile. And the profile brings up a very specific area I want to show you that when you edit your profile, which if you click right here on edit, this is what will power your experience on BizHub by filling in your industry and fully completing your profile with the areas you're interested in, what your expertise is, and sort of how you identify yourself within the business community. Once you click Update Profile, that's going to power your experience on the homepage. It's not only going to bring up resources you might be interested in, but also additional content. It will help track conversations that you're having with other communities. It will tell you about events that are coming up, such as tomorrow, we have the restaurant reboot, which is involved with BizHub as well. But it will also suggest resources. Look at here, we got holistic B2B right here, Michael's business popping right up. And then also articles. So it will power your experience based on how you identify yourself. Not only can you find those elements on the homepage, but you can dig in a little bit deeper right over here on the My Community or through the Ask Us area. And it's going to take you into some other areas where you can connect. I'm going to show a couple of quick areas, and then I want to jump right into showing you the tools in the for a business model canvas. But you can connect in our peer-to-peer forum where you can introduce yourself, connect with others, reach out to Mitch or myself. You can go into the member directory. This is where you could type in Michael's name and you could shoot him an email and say hi to him. So you just write in his name and then click search. Or you can, there he is right there, or you can also search based off of people's persona if you're looking for a mentor or an advisor, to check to see if people speak other languages that you might need to access. You can also translate the entire platform if necessary. Then our resource compass allows for you to filter for resources that might be interesting to you. You can select areas of interest right here. I know that Michael's business is in here, so you can filter through that. You can find other businesses. I know yesterday we were talking about funding. There's different funding elements in there. You can also look at upcoming events. This is a community calendar. We're going to be pulling together events, so you can explore events that you might be interested in. And then, of course, stories and knowledge being checklists, other additional information, and where we're actually going to be putting the recordings for all these sessions. So real quick, I'm going to go back up here to home. And I want to show you a new toolkit. We've got a business model canvas template right here. Really simple to use. Just click on business model canvas. You see I have a little test here. Just click add new. Put the name of your business right there. Once you do that, it will create this little template. Take this pencil. I've already filled this in a little bit, but each of the areas will be blank and you can fill in with your details. But let's say you may have forgot some of the valuable knowledge that Michael shared today, which I doubt you will. But if you did, you can click right here and you'll notice that it gives you a little detail and you can just go into learn more and it will give you added detail on what that area means. Just a little extra coaching to remind you some of the valuable ways that you can use it. And after you're done, you can actually share this business model canvas. So let's say you're going to have a meeting with Michael. You could actually go in here and you could share it with Michael, or you could share it with Mitch if you're going into an advising session with him. So just some really great tools to use. We look forward to having you in BizHub. We look forward to having you log in, share the word about it. I'll be sure to put in the chat how you can access it, and we look forward to seeing you there. So thank you so much, and I am going to turn it over to you, Mitch.
Yes. Oh, let me turn my camera on. I forgot I had that off. So thanks again, everybody, for your time and attention. Just real quickly want to emphasize the importance of, as a business owner operator, knowing what has to be done. Michael just spent the last 40 minutes or so, 50 minutes talking about business model canvas and the fact that there's kind of that internal facing side and an external facing side when it comes to putting together your business plan. So you do need to know that all those things need to get done, but you don't have to do it all yourself. And that's one of the final points I think Michael was making, is that, everybody has their sweet spot, the thing that they're good at, the thing they love to do. That's great. Do that. You can't ignore the rest of it. You still have to do a good job at getting everything else done. And that's where I think finding the right resources comes into play. And that's why we have BizHub. We want to make it easier for you to get the resources that you need in order to do a good job of growing and having a successful business. So with that, we're about 2 minutes over. Sorry, we kept you a little bit longer, but we hope you got something good from it. Know that we will be doing more business model canvas workshops in the future. We just launched one this week, as Mike said. and we're going to schedule another one, in the coming months here. So keep your eyes open. I put the workshop calendar in the chat box, so you know where to look for workshops as we add them. So unless there's any other questions or comments, we'll close here and just say thank you and have a good day.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much
Thanks,
for joining, everyone. Thank you, Michael, for an awesome presentation. We look forward to
Yeah.
having you
Thank you.
join us tomorrow. Bye, everyone.